What's going on, everybody? Welcome. I don't know when Rich is going to join us. He has the link. I hope that he does join us. But Jonathan, also known as Mr. G. Brooks, how are you doing, sir?
I'm doing very well.
Great,
Happy to be here tonight.
Well, I'm going to let you introduce our guest, and we'll just bring him up and get right to it.
Yeah, absolutely. And if for some reason Rich is having problems, I'll hop down after this little quick intro.
Okay, because he has the link, so he should be able
to get in. I know it's a little bit.
There he is.
Yeah,
all right. What's up?
What's up, Rich?
What's up? How you guys doing today,
Manamal Reacts, aka Rich.
Yeah. How you doing? What's up? This is strange to be doing on another panel.
Yeah. Well, let's just get right to it.
Right.
Let's do it.
Absolutely. All right. I'll start with a little quick intro for all of these gentlemen. So how this came together, right? And I swear I won't take more than 5 minutes. These guys are pros. I'm not. So my son says to me about 6 months ago, he says, I want to be a YouTuber, a famous YouTuber at that. And I was like, okay, I'll go vet it out for you. And so I started sneaking around, getting on channels. I ended up finding the lab, Josh, our host, first. And he was so kind to let me come up on his panel one night. I don't know why he did it. But Josh has covered and been in true crime for quite a while. He's covered West Memphis 3. Most recently, he's doing great work on Summer Wells case. And then by kind of circumstance, maybe on a Josh off now. Most recently, he's doing great work on Summer Wells case. And then by kind of circumstance, maybe on a Josh off now.
Somebody echoing?
I think I am. I think I know why.
Do you have two windows open?
I did. Sorry about that. All right.
We're good.
Am I better now?
Yeah.
All right, cool. Well, anyways, so I found Josh. He's covered true crime for a very long time. West Memphis 3, and most recently Summer Wells case. And then I came across Rich. Rich at the time was covering the Alex Murdaugh case. That's how we met. And but prior to that, Rich got into true crime. He was covering the Gabby Petito case. These guys have both just became such great friends of mine. I talk to them daily, and I love what they do. And then the weirdest thing, so I'll go to the GOAT, the greatest of all time, predator catcher. Got Chris
the missile.
Yeah, we got Chris Hansen on the show, guys. Obviously, you know him from TCAP, To Catch a Predator. He was with NBC for over 30 years, or just over 20 years. Sorry. But he's covered Columbine. He covered September 11. He's won 8 Emmys. This man is just a great deterrent for everything that we get up here and talk about, right? And so I'm so proud to have him on. And it's really weird how Chris and I came together to get him on. My wife says to me, it's perfectly fine for my wife to watch, episodes of the Gilmore Girls over and over from the 2000s, but it's totally strange for me to watch episodes of To Catch a Predator constantly.
Well, you know how most of them end.
nonetheless, here we are. I'm just a huge fan, and I'm happy to have him on. So I'm going to kick it off with the first question, Chris, and I'm going to turn it over to the pros here.
Pros.
Pros. My question, Chris, is does the penalty match the crime at this point? I mean, I think we've all talked about how we would much rather hang out with a murderer than a child sex offender, right? But murderers go to jail for life. And we got these sex offenders, which obviously happen more than one time, a lot of times, that only go in for 3 years and some probation. And does the sex offender registry, is it really a deterrent? I know that's a loaded question, but I'll turn it over to you.
Well, I think it's a great question, and thanks all of you guys for having me on. I appreciate it very much. It's inconsistent, to be honest with you. Sometimes we see cases, depending on which state, Florida, for instance, where they crack down pretty hard. These guys get arrested in a sting operation, and even if it's their first time, we're seeing them get 2 to 4 years. Sometimes we see probation and registration as a sex offender. Now, we want easy answers in our society. We want to know who these predators are, what makes them tick, and to punish them in a way that will prevent them from offending again. The problem, of course, is that these guys are all different. Some can be kept out of trouble with probation and registration. These guys have impulse control problems, but once they get wrapped, they'll stop it. There are hardcore guys who will never stop and probably need to be in prison for life. And then there's these guys in the middle. And we really don't know and can't predict what's going to happen after they get out in 2 years. We had a guy in a sting recently in Ohio who got caught, had to face me, had gone to prison once before, got caught in this deal trying to meet a teenage girl, bonds out. And 2 weeks later, he's caught in a hotel room 1 county away in Ohio with a 14-year-old girl having sex and videotaping the sexual contact. What's the deterrence there? To me, that's a candidate for lock him up for a very long time. So there's no national standard. And I've been asked this question, and it's a great question. It's one of the many vexing things that has come out of these investigations that we've been doing now for 19 years, is that it's hard to predict. We caught a doctor in a Michigan sting a couple months ago, 61 years old. This guy will lose his license to practice medicine, will probably have to leave the country, try to carve out a living, but he will, face the wrath of his family, and he'll have to go to therapy, and he will have to learn some sort of impulse control, and probably he'll stay out of trouble for the rest of his life, albeit he's already 61. So it's hard to tell, but I do think the registration as a sex offender at least allows people to know where these guys are, right? The most dangerous sex offender is the one who doesn't register. The marshal's office goes out every year and has these dragnet sweeps and arrests guys who are sex offenders who are unregistered or don't re-register when they move. And those are the dangerous ones. The ones who register, at least they may be dangerous, but at least you know where they are. You can track them. You can track whether or not they go to their therapy and meet their probation requirements. So it is something. Is it enough in every case? Absolutely not.
Chris, it's great to meet you. We talked a little bit backstage. My name's Josh. I'm the host of the lab, and always been a fan of yours, and watch most things that you do. What I found most interesting about you when researching you a little bit was how you got into true crime. You're a Jimmy Hoffa guy.
Yeah.
What happened to Jimmy, Chris?
Well, I think he was kidnapped by elements of the mob in Detroit. And there are various stories, as you mentioned, I was, just fascinated by this whole thing. It happened. He was last seen and presumably kidnapped at a restaurant that was about 1.5 miles from my childhood home. And I was 14, 15 years old at the time. And I used to ride my bike up there, and they had the crime tape, and there was police officers and FBI agents and local reporters, network correspondence, and I started to watch the news religiously to follow this. And I got bit by the bug. What happened to him? I'm getting a little echo here all of a sudden.
Yeah, I am as well.
Was that you?
It's not me.
It might be me. I'm having a little problem with maybe. Let me check this. How about now?
Let me try it now. Yeah, we're good now.
You're good.
So there are a couple different theories in the files of the FBI and Oakland County authorities, and it's pretty clear that whoever kidnapped him got rid of the body very quickly. I don't think he's buried under Giants Stadium. I don't think there's any great, place to dig and look. I think they either took him to a chromium dipping facility, Detroit's an auto town, and there's nothing left of him, or that he was taken to one of the other prevailing theories is he was taken to a garbage grinding facility, and again, there's nothing left.
Yeah.
There have been stories about a trace of blood here at this house in Detroit, or his last seen. We all watched The Irishman, which was a wonderful film. Obviously, built up some parts of the story that may not be exactly the way it went down, but I don't think there's anything left of him to find. Is the reality?
Yeah, I actually just watched that the other day. Rich, this is Rich from Manamal Reacts. He's a great host. He also covers true crime. So take it away, Rich.
How you doing?
I'm good, Rich. How are you?
I'm a big fan of yours. I'm good. I'm a big fan of yours as well. I've been watching a lot of your Catch a Predators since you started. What year did you start that?
We did the very first Predator investigation in 2004. We shot it in Bethpage, Long Island, and honestly, I had pitched this story as a one-off for Dateline, where I was a correspondent at the time, and I had no idea that this was going to turn into a franchise that continues 19 years later.
Huge.
Yeah. So we set it up. We didn't collaborate with police in that first investigation or any law enforcement.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm driving out there, and I start to think to myself, I've spent tens of thousands of dollars of the network's money. We've got Perverted Justice, the online watchdog group, and they're online, and I've got some security, and we've got a house wired in Long Island. And what if nobody shows up? And with that, my producer calls and says, where the hell are you? We've got, 2 guys doing here in 45 minutes. And 2.5 days into it, it was just a short sting. We had 17 guys surface, including a New York City firefighter. And it was just, it was overwhelming. It took a few days to process what we had just seen and experienced. And it took a little while before we could put it together into, a 2-part special for Dateline. There's 2 segments in an hour-long show. And it really resonated with people because we knew anecdotally that kids were getting targeted by adults online.
Yeah.
And bad things were happening. But remember, back in those days, we merely had decoys in chat rooms on AOL and Yahoo. Today, it's a whole different world. There are daily more and more social media platforms upon which adults can meet, find, and groom children.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Chris, that would lead me to my next question. This actually came up last night when I was on Manamal's show, just kind of talking about you. There are so many more channels now to do what these predators do, and what we were discussing is, all right, so there's also this whole new vigilante style predator catcher, and the police do not work with them directly in some cases. In some cases they do. Obviously, you've inspired all of that. How do you feel about the fact that a lot of these don't turn into arrests? And what should they do better?
Well, look, I think there's an important place for citizen journalists, and I think everybody has a First Amendment right to say what they want to say and to dig into these criminal cases. And you see podcasts that have crowdsourced solutions to cases. And you see some people, who are vigilante-like, who try to find people online who are predators. And some criminal cases have been made. based upon this vigilante work. More often than not, I have found that law enforcement will shy away from it because the work might be sound and they might have exposed somebody who should have been exposed, but it's hard to put all that together and get it in front of a prosecutor and get it approved. There are a lot of constitutional issues here. And not everybody is doing it for altruistic reasons. Some of these people are doing it to get clicks and they want to brag that they have so many subscribers on YouTube and all that's fine. You know, and there's nothing wrong with making money from having a YouTube show, but you get into a real gray area. We had a case that we came across just in the last couple of weeks in Genesee County, Michigan. The sheriff's department actually arrested a guy who lured a predator who was trying to meet a teenager. They got into an altercation. The vigilante punctures the predator's tires, and it turns into this whole row, and they end up arresting the vigilante. And they had nothing that they could hold the alleged predator on.
Wow.
Now, when we've evolved over the 19 years, you know, we did it the first few times on our own and, you know, not really knowing what we'd find.
Yeah.
But law enforcement was able to take those cases because Perverted Justice was very good with the transcripts and there was some integrity in the chain of evidence. And so many of those cases were, in fact, prosecuted. But even with law enforcement involved, it's still, you know, not a slam dunk that the prosecutor is going to take the case. Virtually all of ours are prosecuted because of the way we collaborate with law enforcement. And we've evolved out of a sense of, you know, social responsibility, number one. Number two, you know, it was very unfulfilling as a television correspondent and producer to see these guys walk off into the sunset. You know, you want to see some, you know, finality to it, some justice being served.
Yeah, exactly.
And so, you know, we try not to operate like the Wild Wild West. And that's what happens sometimes with these vigilante groups. And they get mad at me because I won't collab with them or I won't, you know, endorse them. And we have our own way of doing it. And we take people inside the commission of a felony in a way that nobody else can because we have the relationships to do it. And whether it's a predator investigation, like, you know, the ones we're talking about now, or another investigation into the Facebook Fiend, a documentary we're working on for True Blue, or the Tracy Hutsana scam story, or sextortion, or any of those compelling crime stories with important narratives where we take people inside the commission of a crime. They see things they wouldn't normally see. They hear things they wouldn't normally hear, and they won't get that anywhere else. And that comes with doing this for 40 years and having relationships with law enforcement around the world. You know, and I wouldn't be able to do True Blue without 20 years at NBC, without a few years doing Crime Watch Daily, without doing Discovery and ID. All that led to what we're doing today. And I'm very fortunate to have this platform, but it's one of the few that exists where we can do this kind of work and control the content and control the distribution of the content and bring it, you know, efficiently and creatively to our audience.
I also don't think that people, when you watch the show, obviously what's happening is that something very serious is going on. A predator is there to take advantage of a child. I mean, that's, you know, and people talk about entrapment and all that. It's not entrapment because they're the ones that reach out. You know, I get all that, but I don't think people realize how dangerous it really is what you're doing, Chris. What safety precautions do you take? I mean, I watch these and nobody frisks these guys before they come in. You don't know what's in their pockets. They could pull out anything at any time. What do you do, or how do you guys set that up to try to prevent something bad like that from happening?
Well, sometimes they are frisked and sometimes they're actually, you know, handcuffed by authorities. It depends on the situation. It depends on the jurisdiction in which we're working.
Oh, you mean before?
Sometimes
you just take them because you're like, they could be dangerous.
So there are different protocols in different jurisdictions where we work, right? So we have, you know, the Polk County Sheriff's in Florida has one way of doing things. Genesee County in Michigan might have another. Montgomery County, Ohio may have one way. A county in California might do it another way. So we adapt. But to answer your question, we and law enforcement use technology and databases to know as much about this person coming in as we possibly can. And sometimes we know a lot. Sometimes we know exactly what car they're driving. The fact that they're a doctor or they're an engineer, or, we know a lot about them. We can determine whether or not they've got a criminal record sometimes.
What about purchase a
sometimes
firearm?
Well, if they've got a firearm license, sometimes we know.
Gotcha.
But that's the part, that's the mystery part of this. And I think that's part of what makes these stories so compelling, is that you don't really know 100%. If the guy's talking online about, carrying a gun everywhere he goes, then yeah, we will have law enforcement take the lead on it and secure him so there isn't a shootout inside the house. We don't want any unnecessary danger or violence. And I think over the years, we've evolved to a point where we have made this absolutely as safe as it can be for what it is. And again, this isn't, political analysis or white paper reporting. This is enterprise journalism. And so it's edgy. And by its very nature, there is a little, bit of danger there. And we deal with that as best we can.
Go ahead, Rich.
I have so many questions, and I don't want to talk your ears off, and there's so many questions regarding so I'm a citizen journalist, a citizen crime journalist, I guess, because you called a citizen journalist, right? You like to call it.
Sure.
But regarding sextortion cases, can you elaborate more on that?
This is an amazing, horrifying crime.
Yeah, can you?
And I had no idea what we were getting into when we started reporting this, but there are cases, dozens and dozens, if not hundreds, across the country, where Eastern European and West African crime syndicates, scam artists, are posing as young women, girls, teenagers, sending photos to young men, teenagers, and getting them to send videos and pictures, sexually suggestive ones, of themselves back. Then the con artist, the scammer, says, "Oh, we caught you. Now we've got a picture of you doing whatever on video, and we're going to put this out to all your friends on Instagram and Facebook. We're going to show your grandma and your parents and your sisters, and unless you give us money." And so the kid freaks out, and it's a 15 or 16-year-old boy who can't see past the immediate, anxiety and angst that this is causing. So they give him $100. They've got $100, and they say, "No, now we want two." And they keep going and going and going. And these kids, they can't see a way out. Their brains aren't fully developed, so they end up committing suicide. I sat last week in South Carolina with a state representative, a lawmaker, whose son, in the span of an hour and 40 minutes, got tricked by one of these scam artists, went and got the family gun. The dad, three boys all together in the family. The dad's saying goodnight to everybody. The son passes him in the hallway, doesn't say much. He's saying, well, he's a teenager, whatever. He has a gun in his pants. He goes in the bathroom and shoots himself in the head, dead.
Oh, my God.
Can you imagine the horrifying tragedy that is? I mean, losing a kid under any circumstances, right?
Yeah.
But I've sat for this story, or will have by the time we're done shooting it next week, with 4 different sets of parents whose boys killed themselves.
Really?
Not troubled kids, creative kids, good students, athletes, committed suicide because these evil bastards, half a world away, think they can get a couple $100 out of them. And these kids, look, kids that age, their life is all about their social media profile, when in reality, nobody gives a rat's ass whether there's a picture of their private parts out there. Grandma's never going to see it. If you blow them off, they go away, but these kids can't see through it. I sat in the San Jose, California Police Department, interviewing detectives who work these cases, and a grieving mother who lost her son over this. And in the span of the 48 hours we were in town, they got 4 reports of sextortion. Wow. There's a case in northern Michigan. We're going to talk to the parents next week. I'm going to fly up there. And they actually, the FBI got involved with the sheriff up in Marquette, Michigan, and they were able to get an arrest in Nigeria. And now they're trying to extradite the criminals back to the United States to face charges. They're tough cases. I mean, we've done scam artist stories. You mentioned earlier, Dateline, where we spent a year with 4 producers, fleshing these guys out in London and the Netherlands and all over the world. And we confront them. And it's hard work to find these guys overseas and to bring them to justice. But, there's got to be a money man, a money mule in the United States, and they're starting to find these guys and hold them accountable. But it's, we're doing a big series for True Blue. We're doing another that might air on another platform. And we're so passionate about this project that between now and the fall, we're actually going to edit an hour show that we're going to give to school districts around the country just to play in their schools, and hope that we can get, some attention for this. And I think it will, and I just think it's important because I think we can save lives.
Yeah. But do you have a show on True Blue right now that's for?
Yeah. So we have Takedown, which is the new Predator series. We've got 35 or 36 new episodes there. We've got True Crime Nation, which is our news magazine where we do a lot of interviews and shorter different crime stories.
All scrolling at the bottom, by the way.
Yeah. Yep. And then, we continue to expand True Blue on a weekly basis. We now have live capabilities. We did a live show last Thursday night with one of the sheriffs who work with, Chris Hansen, and a defense lawyer who represents some of these predators, Mike Manley, and this is all, people can check this out too. It's still up on the site, and who gave us a really good insight into the other side of this. Who are these guys? Because at some point, whether they're wealthy or poor, they have to sit in a lawyer's office one-on-one and the lawyer says, WTF, it's just us here. And there's attorney-client privilege. Tell me what the hell went through your mind that led you here. Mm-hmm. And so he had an incredible insight into this as well. But yeah, I mean, look, the last couple big documentaries I did for Discovery Plus, and I love the Discovery people. They're great. The Peter Nygaard and the Onision in Real Life. Those projects took 18 to 24 months by the time you get through all the network bureaucracy. Well, we don't have that at True Blue. I talked to my co-founder, Sean Reck. I said, look, I need a crew on Tuesday. I get a crew on Tuesday. We have to be responsible for budgets and all the things that networks do, but I can get these products. I can finish this content in, a quarter of the time and control the distribution of it and tailor this to our specific audience. And I know what they want.
So let's talk I think it's probably your most famous video, Jeff Sokol. I'm sure you get asked about that guy.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
All the time. And not to make light of it.
No,
but that I'm telling you right now, that was a good looking pizza.
Yeah.
That pizza looked great.
The story behind that pizza, don't you?
No.
So we did that sting in Fairfield, Connecticut with the Fairfield PD. Very all our law enforcement agencies are very professional, but Fairfield County is where I once lived, and this is actually the town of Fairfield. And so both my sons had gone to school at a Fairfield Prep, and so my oldest son was actually one of the cameramen on that shoot. And Jeff Sokol is coming all the way from Boston, and oftentimes we'll have the Predator stop and get something, whether it's a pop or anything, and so.
Mike's Hard Lemonade.
Yeah, White Claw, whatever. And and so I shout out. I said, "What's a good pizza place around?" The decoy needs to know. And my son says, "Tell him to go to Planet Pizza." So he went to Planet Pizza. So the Fairfield police could see that he pulled up. They had him under surveillance and could radio the other police who are collaborating with us that he's going to be here in 11 minutes. And to your point about it being humorous, yes. Look, you have to acknowledge that as dark and serious as this is, there are some humorous moments, and you need to tip your hat to that. And I try to do it without being goofy or, going overboard. But, sometimes there's just some questions that you have to ask in a way that, they will be humorous and, when they go on the air, but it also elicits a response. Right. And sometimes it's just calling bullshit, like this guy, the piece that dropped today on Clifford, his wife works for the Supreme Court in Michigan, and he's out on a Tuesday or Wednesday showing up at a house in mid-Michigan, trying to meet a teenage girl for sex. And he's going to try, now he knows who I am. and he knows he's in trouble, and he's going to try and tell me that, he's the victim. And I said to him, I said, Cliff, it's not like this girl jumped out of the laptop computer while you're sitting on your deck, a retired guy in his 60s, probably 69 years old, and made you come here.
Right.
You had to have this sexually charged conversation, a solicitation. You had to get in your car. You had to drive however long you drove and walk in this door. And they often know that it could be a sting operation. Some of these guys fanboy over the fact that they're going to sit down with me for a half hour or hour and talk about it. And they reference it in the chats. And people say, oh, these guys are so stupid they get caught. They're not stupid. They can't control their urge to have sex with a teenage boy or girl. And they cross this line between fantasy and reality. And there's so much of this on the internet. Porn is so easy to get. Child porn, regular porn, whatever. And you get desensitized to it. Some guys do. And nothing will turn them on except the thought of this actual face-to-face meeting, a sexual encounter. And they throw caution to the wind. It's like a heroin addict. And you get them to the point where you're going to give them the heroin. And then you say, well, there might be fentanyl in it and it could kill you. And they want the heroin anyway, because the addiction, the compulsion, the drive is such that they can't turn it down.
Right.
I mean, that it's completely amazing. One of the things that I think about is you guys obviously catch a lot of people, but I think about all the people that you have deterred. I mean, there has to be thousands of people.
Oh, I think so.
That get deterred
think
from it as well.
Yeah, I think deterrence is part of it. And I also think that the best thing we do is create awareness and a dialogue, right? Deterrence is part of it. And look, if no crimes were committed, I could go to Italy and do a cooking show and have a fine time at that in my sunset years as a journalist, but sadly, I don't think that's going to happen. This is a difficult crime for demand reduction. When it comes to drug addiction and drug crimes, we can treat addiction as a sickness. And we should do this with sex offenders too, but it's more difficult to identify and to enforce. And so the best defense is what you say and do with your children to make them aware that these guys are out there. And especially when it comes to the predators I've caught. And, when you talk about the sextortion stuff, I mean, the lives that could be saved just by these kids coming forward and saying, hey, I'm in a jam, I need your help. And parents have to really stay on top of it. My guys are older, my kids go from 31 to 21. And so they're out of that danger zone. But now kids who are 14, 15 years old, I mean, they got to really be careful. You got to really sit them down. And if they're anywhere close to the internet, I mean, platforms that you think are safe are no longer safe without education and some observation. We had a 12-year-old girl who was groomed by a man in Florida on Instagram and talked her into climbing out of her family's bedroom window in her family's home, meeting him, and he takes her to a hotel. It's documentaries on True Blue. It's
the guy from Florida, right?
Yeah, the guy from Florida.
Yeah.
And then it turns out that he admits to 2 other cases in other states. So if he cops to 3, what else is out there? We had a guy in an Ohio sting, drove from Chicago 4.5 miles.
Jesus.
4.5 hours, to Dayton. And in the course of the conversation, admits to me that he had done this with 2 other teenage girls, one in Michigan and one in Ohio. Drives from Chicago. He's got a backpack. He's an engineer, professional guy. In his backpack, he's got condoms, lubricants, spermicide, weed pens, and Plan B pills.
Jeez.
And he's wearing a necklace, a friendship necklace, like with half of a medallion that this girl had given him, whom he'd sexually assaulted, but groomed into thinking that they had some sort of relationship.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
Chris, one of the craziest ones I've seen you do recently, a guy showed up to meet with a guy that was pimping out his daughter.
Yes.
And that was just insane to me. Like he sat down, he was comfortable. Like he had done this before.
He was, you know who he reminded me of? You ever watch Family Guy?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Herbert the Pervert.
I got some popsicles.
Yeah, that's exactly what he sounded like. He walks in with his milkshake for the girl.
Really? You sound like that?
Yeah, it was shy. Everybody on the set in the Sting picked it up on it. But he walks in. This guy's 71 years old. Drives from Indiana to Ohio, and the detective, poses as the father, and the deputy poses as the daughter, and he's sitting on the couch looking at her, sizing her up. Talking about how he's going to have sex with her, and then watch the dad do it. It's mind-boggling, right?
He's like, you've done a great job preparing her.
Yeah, 13-year-old boys don't know how to teach it. No, she's 13. None of this should be happening. Yeah. And so we find out during the course of my interview with him that he's retired, but what he does now is run these programs for sexually addicted people, and he goes into jails to counsel sex offenders with addiction problems. So here's a guy who's doing that, probably getting off doing that, and now he's in our Sting admitting to all this.
Yes, crazy.
Go ahead, Rich.
I have a question. We were talking about sex offenders and rehabilitation yesterday. So I have a question for one of my subscribers. Sure. Karen Lee says, there's two-part question. Do you believe a sex offender can be truly rehabilitated? And two is the National Sex Offender Registry truly national and all-inclusive with up-to-date information from all 50 states in the United States?
The registered sex offender lists are state by state. So if you're caught in Michigan, even in a federal sting, you register in Michigan. When you move, you're supposed to register in the new state and report to your probation officer if you're on probation or parole. Does rehabilitation work? I can't guarantee that. I think there are certain motivated individuals who have offended in this way, who with discipline, therapy, treatment can not reoffend. I believe that can happen. And I think there are therapists and psychiatrists who study this and work with people to make sure that doesn't happen. I think that the chances are better the earlier the offender is caught. If you catch somebody 14, 15 who's moving in that direction, you can change that behavior and prevent the date rapist or the predator in college or shortly thereafter. But the problem is it's not a real glamorous part of medicine. I mean, if you spend $250,000 on a medical degree, and you have the choice of going into federal prisons and interviewing sex offenders or opening up a plastic surgery practice on Park Avenue, you choose. I mean, it's tough. I get it. It's tough. And there are some extraordinarily dedicated psychiatrists and therapists who work in this field and have had amazing results. But I can't sit here and tell you guys that there's one sort of therapy or one sort of treatment or one sort of punishment and monitoring plan that works, because there just isn't. It's not that kind of a crime. It's not like a mobster who gets pinched and says, okay, I'm going to go clean, and they got a coffee can full of money in the backyard and they use that to get, reestablished. So, it's a different sort of criminal.
So Chris,
wait. So I just want to know, with all the people you arrested and went to jail, do you know if any of them were rehabilitated? Do you?
Yeah,
that's stories like, hey, I'm a bad person now.
Yeah, well, that's one of the things we do in the podcast, Predators I've Caught. I go back and look at these past cases. There's 600 cases or so, and we go back and look at these. And I reach out to the predator. Sometimes they talk, sometimes they don't, sometimes they think about it. But I can immerse myself in the transcripts. I can immerse myself in the interviews with me and with the authorities. And I can reach out and I can track the public records, with my producers and see if they've reoffended. And so every week we have a new episode of a Predator I've Caught. And we delve into that very question.
What's the name of that show?
This is my podcast, Predators I've Caught with Chris Hansen. It's on all the platforms.
It's on
And we'll,
True
we'll
Blue.
link all those in the description under
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
the
So
video as
we've
well.
got, we've been at it. I think we've read 120, 130 episodes out and into it. And it's almost therapeutic, honestly, to me in a weird way that, I can go back over. And I know that sounds odd. People ask all the time, so do you ever go to therapy with all the dumb stuff you do? And it's weirdly it is because, when you're doing these investigations, you're often so caught up in the moment that it's possible that you miss something in the transcripts or you think of something you should have asked. And I'm pretty good at this point in my career of, not missing anything. But you do go back and you do have questions in your mind and you can raise this. And for instance, we heard from, and I have a very close relationship with the podcast audience. I get a lot of, every week I do a question from the audience and people write into Chris@predatorpodcast.com and I try to, read them all and listen to them all. And I encourage them to send audio clips in with the questions. But a woman reached out to me who started watching some of the Predator episodes on YouTube, some of the past ones, when she was in college. And she sees a guy and she says, oh my God, that's a guy who told me he was 18 when I was 15 or 16 and a very vulnerable kid in a vulnerable place. And I allowed him to come over and we hung out and had sex. And it turns out the guy's not 18. He's well into his 20s. He was a registered sex offender on probation and had gotten caught in one of my stings 5 or 6 years earlier.
Wow.
Was
And
that
now
the McDonald's guy?
Huh?
Was that that weird guy at
No,
McDonald's?
this was a guy who was in Riverside County.
Oh, okay.
And that was 2 or 3 episodes ago on the podcast, but she actually did an interview with me and took me through everything that happened. So here's a guy, so then you got to wonder, okay, if he gets caught, right?
Right.
In the Riverside County sting, he wasn't an incredibly compelling character. He was in the show, wasn't one of the standout guys who walked in naked or was a repeat offender or was a teacher or something like that. But he was in. And you'd think that would scare the hell out of a guy and never offend again. But there he is. He's on probation and a registered sex offender meeting an underage girl online for sex 5 years later. So what else has he done?
Was that the Oops guy?
No, the Oops guy was he showed up in Riverside and then again in Long Beach. This is another fellow, but you can, if you want to listen to the episode, you can go back. It's just a couple weeks ago, but
I'll catch it for sure.
She was a great interview, and she's now a teacher with a 3-year-old child of her own. And so the perspective that she has on all this in terms of how she was groomed by this guy and how she's a kid at home alone, who had emotional issues and was looking for somebody to be friends with. And this guy comes over and totally takes advantage of her.
Hey, Chris, we obviously want to be super respectful of your time. You're happy to stay all night with us if you want to. But
I'll come back. I'll come back.
We have lots of questions.
We had a couple of other topics, and if you don't know anything about it or if you don't want to talk about it, that's totally fine. But a very popular topic on a couple of these channels is the Summer Wells case. Have you been following that?
I have not been reporting on the Summer Wells case, so I'm probably not the best source on that. But
that's okay.
I mean, it's. I know why people are interested. It's fascinating, and to be honest, now that you've brought it up, we probably should take a look at it for True Blue, and I will. So the next time we talk, I'll be up to speed on it. I promise.
That'd be great.
Yeah, definitely. And then
what's your take on it?
I'll let Josh talk to that.
But Josh, you've been following it, right?
We've got some people beating on us in the chat to ask about on it. I don't even know how to say it.
I've been following it
about that too. I have a question about the.
Yeah, I've been following it from basically the beginning. Obviously, without any proof and not much updates. I do believe that the parents haven't been honest, but that's speculation. It's 2 years. There's really a lot to it, it's just I think it's one of those things where law enforcement is just still working, and it takes a
Yeah.
long time to
Well,
build
you saw. I
cases.
mean, look what happened in Idaho. The college campus murders. People were starting to say, "Oh, these cops don't know what they're doing. It's a local department. It's a small department. They don't." And
We hear that all the time.
And you know what? They were on top of it, and they did
were.
a darn good job solving that case and getting Kohlberger.
You follow Delphi?
I did. I was actually out there for Crime Watch Daily when that went down.
It's one about that.
And that was those poor little girls. I mean, geez. And again, they kept chipping away at it, and they finally got their guy. And I think, my gut is they got the right guy on it. There might be somebody else, perhaps involved, but I think they have the right guy.
Go ahead, Rich.
Well, all right. So the person that's looking back years later, what is your opinion? I'm not sure if you answered this already, but what is your opinion on Greg, also known as Onision now?
Onision.
Onision, yeah. That's I was trying to say it too. I couldn't.
Do you think he's still grooming teens? And the person says, I do. I think he's guilty of grooming. So they want to know do you think he's still grooming teens?
I think he's been exposed to the point where it would be hard for him to operate the way he did, years ago. We did a number of interviews on my YouTube channel with his alleged victims, and we did a big documentary series for Discovery Plus, where we exposed what he was doing and how YouTube, allowed him to stay monetized for a period of time. In fact, that documentary led to him being demonetized, and it exposed some of the things he did and gave a voice to his victims. And now he's facing 2 major lawsuits from those victims, and he's in trouble with those lawsuits. I mean, he could be held liable, and he's not been charged criminally at this point. And it's a real lesson in strength of victims finally coming forward and taking control and filing these civil lawsuits, even though some of the criminal allegations might be outside the statute of limitations. So I don't think he's active in the grooming world anymore, as far as I can tell. And we kind of wrapped up our investigation with that documentary on Discovery Plus.
Chris,
is he arrested? I was just curious. Where is he? Is he
arrested? He's out. I mean, he's facing these 2 civil cases, but he's not been charged criminally.
Oh, okay. Wow.
Yeah.
Chris, what is your advice to parents of young children that use the internet so frequently and can just access it at any time? Is there any advice that you give to parents to help prevent or deter these kinds of things happening?
You have to monitor what your kids are doing. You have to know, and you have to have an open discussion with them about the potential dangers. And it starts at an early age, whenever they first have access to the internet. And it starts with, look, there are grown-ups on the internet who will try to trick you, and kids don't like to be tricked. And then you have to escalate that conversation as they mature, as they continue to have access. I remember very early on in the predator investigations, I had a group of 12 middle schoolers all sitting on like risers. Mm-hmm. And I said to them, show of hands, how many of you have been approached online by an adult and it made you feel bad, creepy, it made you nervous? Virtually all of them raised their hands. I said, how many of you told your parents? And they're looking down at their shoes and they're kicking their shoes. And one of the kids raises their hand. I said, why didn't you tell your folks? They said, well, we were afraid they're going to take away our access to the internet. And it was a stunning lesson to me as a journalist and as a parent that, you have to create some sort of communication there where you prevent them from going to dangerous places, but at the same time, if they slip into one, they'll tell you about it. Or if somebody approaches them, they'll tell you about it. When I was growing up, the lesson was, don't talk to strangers. Good advice then, good advice today. The problem is that the guy who's a stranger on Wednesday is so adept at grooming that he's not a stranger to your child by Friday and Saturday.
Right.
And so you just got to stay on top of it. And it's this whole experience reporting on the sextortion story it's really, it's changed the way I look at some of this stuff, because I've never seen an instance where so many good kids, good students, athletes from good families, I mean, really good parents, took their lives because they were afraid because they couldn't see their way out of a situation. I mean, it still shakes me. And I end up in tears when I interview these parents, because I treat them as if, as a parent, not a journalist sometimes. And it's so upsetting.
Happens
And
so
I'm so
much.
passionate about getting the word out on this,
One of your interviews, one of my favorite interviews that you did was when you, Casey Anthony's parents.
Sure.
When did you get involved covering that case? Was it at the beginning? And
no, I didn't
can you
really
talk
get
about
involved. I didn't really get involved in the Casey Anthony case. It was going on when I was at Dateline, and I wasn't one of the guys covering it, one of the correspondents covering it at the time. I got involved later when I was with Crime Watch Daily, and we got the interview with the parents, and it was very emotional and very compelling. And I got the sense that they were being very truthful. I don't think they had
It was so
anything to do
awkward.
with but I don't think they had anything to do with the disappearance. I think that, that Casey Anthony did what she did and resulted in the death of that child. And obviously justice really wasn't served there. But I don't, she's gone off to take money and do her own documentary and claim certain things about the parents. I don't think it's true.
Did you feel awkward when you were interviewing them and, you had George saying, I'll never talk to her again. And then the mother saying, well, I love her. I, still talk to her.
It was an odd dynamic. Yeah. But it was brutally honest in a very raw way that I thought was truthful and spoke to the true nature of this tragedy, which is it broke apart a family because the mother, Casey Anthony, the daughter of obviously in my interview, just acted wantonly, selfishly, and irresponsibly, leading to the death of her child.
Sounds familiar.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Rich.
Well, all right. I have a long question from a member, a follower.
So this is where
blue-eyed
Rich makes a mistake.
Says, I have been a longtime fan of yours, dating back to Dateline, To Catch a Predator series. I read that you began your career young while attending Michigan State University. Do you care to share with us any details on your first assignment you reported on while working at WILX in Lansing, Michigan? Also, any advice for a young teenager who hopes to one day follow the same path as a reporter? My son. Thank you for all you do.
Well, that's a great question. So
was from your son?
No, that was from
I was going to say nepotism at its finest.
If you can't get your kids' question
I'm sure
in,
my
who can you
kids
get?
have a few questions too. Let me go get them, Rich.
Welcome, blue-eyed female. Right.
Get them down in their jammies.
Right.
I was very fortunate because when I was at Michigan State, I worked in radio, in commercial radio for WJIM, and the radio station also had a television station right on the other side. There was a CBS station, and the main anchor there was a fellow named Howard Lancourt, and I'd be doing the radio, 5-minute newscasts at night, every hour on the hour, and I'd wander over there and say hello and help him write copy, and it was a smaller market at the time, and so he got hired away from the CBS television station to the NBC station, WILX, as your person mentioned.
Yeah.
And he was not just the anchor, but he was the news director. And I conned him, after several scotches one night at one of the local restaurants, watering holes, into hiring me while I was still a senior in at Michigan State, part-time as a television reporter. And I had tried out for a couple of jobs at the CBS place, and they didn't want anything to do with it. And so I got the job. He hired me. And for literally $4.95 an hour, 3 or 4 days a week.
Big money.
Well, I was, big money at the time. I was on camera covering city council meetings and fires and murders and whatever else came up, and working the weekends. But it was obviously a great experience. And so when I graduated, I went full-time and covered the state capitol and anchored the news on Saturday nights, 6 days a week. Yeah,
you've had a really long career. I mean, NBC, what, like 30 years?
I was at NBC for 21 years. I went from Lansing to Tampa, and from Tampa to Detroit. I was in Detroit for 10 years. I had grown up in Detroit and just had a tremendous experience there. And then in 1993, got the job at NBC.
Hey, can I jump in, Josh, please?
Sure.
Yeah, thank you. Chris, one of my favorite stories that you covered, and honestly, I just thought it was so unique. I watched the documentary White Boy Rick.
Oh, yeah.
And you literally pulled up beside this guy, right? And like a Porsche or something?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, at the time, I had a 63 Corvette convertible. At Channel 7 to Detroit. And they were in some hot rod. I forget some hot foreign car. I don't remember if it was a Porsche or BMW or what it was. But yeah, literally, I'm covering the story of White Boy Rick. And I'm heading downtown on a Friday night to meet some buddies. And who pulls up next to me? But White Boy Rick and his cronies. And,
oh, really? That's funny.
Well, that's it. So the backstory, the documentary you referred to was done by Sean Reck and Transition Studios. He interviewed me at the same table I'm sitting at right now for the documentary, and that began the relationship that forged True Blue 5-6 years later.
No
way.
way.
I met Sean, and he's my partner in True Blue. So he had done a streaming network in the religious gospel world called American Gospel TV with one of his producers, and it took off. And so they had the template for doing a streaming network. And he approached me and said, look, we need to do this on crime. And I have the template set up and the mechanics to do it. And so we formed True Blue, and we're 6 months into it, and we're way ahead of where we thought we'd be. And it's a tremendous place to be. And for a guy at my stage of the game, there's no better place to create content and to distribute this content and to own the content. I mean, this is like a dream come true for me.
I was kind of thinking that as well. It's your gig now, man. Like,
and to have this independence, and just to be free from the bureaucracy. I mean, there's bureaucracy in everything. I mean, anytime you put together a television project, it's a lot, a lot of moving parts. And I've been doing it for a long time, but the way we do it is so much more streamlined and so much more direct to the content consumer that it's liberating for me to have this platform, and it's working. It's happening.
Right. That is awesome. Here's a great question. Lab, can you ask Chris a case that has stuck with him that maybe have helped get justice? Is there any one particular one that sticks out to you? Like Sokol stands out to me.
Right. There's so many in the predator world. I mean, you're looking at going on 600 guys, I suppose, by now.
Wow, 600.
And so
that's so many.
Oh my God.
It's staggering. I mean, between 5 and 6 probably.
Jesus, that's a lot.
So, but the one that really the story, and I've been blessed to, go around the world and cover these things and to, try to create some sense of justice for people. But we did an investigation several years ago at Dateline where we went undercover in Cambodia. We partnered with a non-government organization, an NGO called the International Justice Mission. And we infiltrated the world of sex tourism. Americans and Western Europeans going to these brothels in Cambodia. It happens all over the world, but this one was in Cambodia. And, buying essentially girls at 5, 6, 7 years old.
Oh my God.
And really a horrifying situation. And these girls were sex slaves and these guys were buying them. So anyway, we posed as sex tourists and we infiltrated this, and the local authorities in the International Justice Mission rescued about 37 girls. And we did a whole documentary on it.
How do you dress for something like that? Leather?
No, you just, you try to fit in as a tourist, khakis and, a goofy jungle shirt, I suppose. But
Graphic tees.
yeah, we
Maybe with like a King of Hearts on it.
right, and we exposed the Americans involved, and we saved these girls, and so we did the documentary, we did the hour, and won a couple of Emmys, and the incredible part was, though, we went back 4 years later, and we interviewed some of the girls who were in a bridge school who had been rescued. And, they really didn't speak English, and I don't speak Khmer. So, there was a gap, but we had translators, and we finished the interview, and they knew that I had something to do with them being in a much better place. And so at the end of the interview, they said, "When are you going back to the United States?" I said, "Well, day after tomorrow." And they said, "Well, can we go to the airport with you?" And I said, "Well, if it's okay with people here at the school, of course." And the school administrator says to me later, said, "It's probably because the only Dairy Queen in Phnom Penh is at the airport." I said, "You know what? That's fine. I can, treat to 6 banana splits." So we go to the airport. We're going to fly out that day, and we're at the Dairy Queen, and they come up in the tuk-tuk. All the 6 girls come out, and we're standing there, and we have the banana splits, and it's time to go. And, we go through all the cultural goodbyes and everything else. And there's this 2-story glass window between the outside of the airport and where you go to check in and get your boarding pass. And I look back, and they're waving, and then I look back again, their hands are against the glass, and I go back and put my hands against the glass, and I'm crying, and they're crying, and the cameraman's crying. And it just was one of those moments that in a lifetime, thousands of stories you'll just never forget. And, to expose something like that. And that story kept on generating cases. For instance, 2 cops, for instance, in Vancouver, British Columbia, watched the original series and noticed similarities in the background video of our hidden cameras to videos found in the trunk of a guy who was beating up a prostitute. Turns out he was at that same brothel in Cambodia, and they were able to make a case on him for being a sex tourist and lock him up for 7 years because they were able to match that video. And all these little tentacles that came out from that story, it was incredible.
All right. So my last question of the night. So Chris, obviously this was a bucket list item for me to get my 2 favorite true crime hosts on with, obviously, an 8-time Emmy winner.
Thank you very much for saying that.
And, yeah, you're welcome. But so my bucket list item now complete. What's on your bucket list, man? What is something you haven't done that you want to do?
Well, that's a great question. I've been very fortunate to do a lot, and I think it's really to grow this True Blue network into the entity that I think it can be. Yeah. And I think Sean and I are going to be able to do that and really get to the point where, we're doing not just the predator stories, obviously, which are important, but all these other things that we're currently working on. I mean, literally, we have a dozen documentaries in the pipeline right now, and a dozen more to follow up right after that. So professionally, to continue to do that and do it at a high level. Personally, I got a lot kicking around. I might try to do some features.
You're a big Red Wings fan, correct?
I am. I follow the Red Wings, all the Detroit teams.
So are they going to do something?
I hope so. I'm a big Yzerman fan, and he's
besides suck
now. Yeah, I know. It's been a long dry spell for a lot of the Detroit teams, but hopefully the Lions seem to be showing the most promise, and
never heard that before. Right? I've never heard anybody say that before.
Well, they had
the Lions showing promise.
I know it's tough to wear that Detroit Lions t-shirt around New York,
I bet
you get a lot of teasing from the Giants fans.
Yeah, well, New York ain't doing good either.
Yeah, go ahead with your final question, and then I'll wrap it up for us.
For me?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I didn't hear what you said. All right, so I have one more last question from a member. Sure. Peyton P says, Mr. Hansen, you frequently have used the term parallel investigations to describe To Catch a Predator's relationship with the police. Could you expand a little bit on what you mean by parallel investigations?
Well, I think parallel is another way of saying that we collaborate, or I suppose you could say embed with law enforcement, and it changes from jurisdiction to jurisdiction a little bit, but we rely on law enforcement to provide the decoys now. Perverted justice is no longer in existence, and when you do that, it ensures the chain of evidence of the chat logs, and it ensures the integrity of those chat logs for the prosecution. And it was never too much of an issue, but a couple times there were issues because perverted justice was not part of law enforcement. In a couple of investigations, they were deputized, but they had to rely on, people buying into the fact that perverted justice guys were good guys and they did good work with the chats, and they did. They held themselves to a very high standard. But it's just a cleaner way of prosecuting these cases to have law enforcement decoys involved. And that's basically what I mean by all that. We're in it with them for a sense of social justice and social responsibility. I think it's important that we do collaborate with law enforcement.
Yeah, I have to feel the same way.
Chris, on behalf of everybody here, I want to thank you for taking the time to make this happen for us. It's been a thrill for all of us. I'll get you out of here with just one last question.
Sure.
Where can people find you right now? And what do you have on the horizon that you want to plug?
Right now, in fact, a new episode just dropped tonight on True Blue. Watch trueblue.com, TRUBLU, the takedown investigations. Those are new predator investigations. Also coming on True Blue, multiple documentaries. If you haven't seen the Peter Pejic documentary under True Crime Nation, that's our news magazine, you need to see that. Much more to come on True Blue. And then the podcast, Predators I've Caught with Chris Hansen. I'm all over social media. Instagram, official Chris Hansen, at Chris Hansen on Twitter, and on TikTok now we have a seat with Chris Hansen, so you can check it out, the content we have on TikTok as well.
Perfect.
Right on.
And I wanted to say real quick, Mr. Brooks, thank you for putting this together and working so diligently on it and getting this to happen. It's been a thrill. Manamal, thank you for coming over and bringing your people, your fanimals, as we call them. I got lab rats, and the people that like girth are called flat girthers. And we got the Predator missile at the bottom. That's who he is to me. He's the Predator missile.
The TCAP community.
That's right. It's just been fantastic.
Been an honor.
It has been an
Thanks.
honor.
It was great to be here, and I appreciate the opportunity to chat it up with you guys, and we'll do it again sometime soon.
Yeah, Chris, you want to come back and see us?
Sure, absolutely.
Beautiful.
Awesome. We'll do it again.
Awesome, I promise.
Thanks,
Thanks,
guys.
guys.
Mr. Hansen.
Have a good night and a good rest of the week.
All right.
All right,
Take
guys.
care.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you. Bye now.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. So really quick and great show, guys. I wanted to just really fast, because I've been getting a lot of questions about this. I had to end my live really fast yesterday. I had an emergency. I got a phone call. My dog, Otis, who's just this little 1-year-old pup, was not doing well. He was foaming at the mouth.
Wow,
he was
really?
stumbling around,
Oh my God.
throwing up. We had to rush him to the animal hospital last night. We found out that he had, and what he was doing, I thought he was having seizures. He was spinning around and shaking uncontrollably. What ended up happening was he burst an eardrum from an inner ear infection. So he's home now. He's dizzy. He's wobbly, but he should heal, and he should be fine. So thank you. I know when I ended it, everybody was like, "Oh God, what happened? What happened?" He's gonna be okay. He's home. He's taking medicine. So there you go. So what'd you guys think?
Are you talking to us or are you talking to your chat? I mean,
No, I'm talking. What'd you guys think? That was a great.
that was great. That was amazing. Brooks, you did a great job setting it up, and I commend you for a job well done. You pushed the envelope, and you sent out those emails, and you did a great job.
Thanks, man. My pleasure.
I know. There was some times people were like, "Well, this is supposed to happen," and it did. It did. And by the way, there's a lot to coordinate. You know what I mean? It does.
It's not easy.
Getting 4 people together on the same look. I didn't even know if I was going to be able to do this today because I'd been up all night, dealing with. But it worked out. The dog's doing better. Manamal, I thank you for coming over and hanging out, man. I had a blast.
I was nervous, to be honest.
Were you?
a little bit at the beginning.
Yeah. Well, when he popped up backstage, we talked to him for like 5 minutes before the show, and I was like sitting there thinking,
Yeah,
oh
where's Rich at?
Yeah, we didn't coordinate properly. We should, I think
that's
we should
Gert's
next
fault.
time.
He's the producer. Take it over.
Yeah, it was horrible coordination, and
I screwed it up.
I didn't know. I might end up having sound issues over here, and it was like I was a little nervous at first because I never. I'm talking to Chris Hansen. I mean, I never like spoke to. This is the first time I had someone on a panel like that. This is I'm new at this. I did reactions and I do stuff, but I don't talk to like.
Well, he was awesome.
I'm Emmy winners or whatever he is. Well,
look, it's better than the people that he usually gets to talk to.
Yeah,
like
yeah,
hey, Sokol, come here.
Rich, nervous or not, you had that perfect kind of over the top radio voice to drop the questions.
You could tell the difference. I can't even tell that.
How you do? Welcome. Have a seat with Chris.
Did it really sound like that? Wow.
No, it didn't sound like that. It sounded fine. It was great. Everything went well. So somebody says right here, we had that problem, thought it was a seizure. I thought he was spinning, man. And he's not a bit, he's just a little Frenchy. And
your dog?
Yeah, and when he was spinning and he was like really tense, he was like falling, but he wasn't. He was just sitting still.
Jeez, how the hell?
And that was from the eardrum.
But what did the doctor say? How does that happen?
His eardrum burst. There was an infection in the inner ear. He never showed any symptoms until yesterday when he kind of started drooping and leaning this way.
Wow. And
his balance was off. It was making him nauseous. But so then we were just, that's why I had to go. We had to rush him to the animal hospital, basically, from the town over. And I honestly thought that he was his eyes were rolling in his head. It looked bleak for a while. So he's doing better.
How old is he?
He's gonna be fine. He's just a year.
Wow.
He's just a little guy, and so his equilibrium was gone. It's still not good, but it's better than it was yesterday, and he'll heal. So I just wanted to make sure everybody, because I've been getting that question a lot. But anyway, guys, I want to thank you so much.
All right, man. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, and we'll do it again.
Yeah, we'll see you soon.
Cool. Thanks, man.
All right, I'll talk to you later, guys.
Bye-bye. Girth, once again, great job, man. We'll talk here soon.
You doing that after dark, or how?
I'm gonna go check on my dog and see how he's doing. I gotta take care of him a little bit, but this has been great. If we don't do it tonight, we will do it tomorrow, because we're going to review it, because it's just been such a good time. So
I agree.
Cool,
Thanks, man.
Thank you. Oh, sorry. Say that again.
Thanks for the platform and come together.
Awesome, man. Thank you. Appreciate it. And there it was, guys. There it was. Chris Hansen couldn't have gone any better. Thank you guys so much. And we will absolutely catch you next time here on the lab. For Mr. G. Brooks, the producer of this show, Manamal Reacts, the Fanimals, Lab Rats, Flat Girthers. Thank you so much for the memberships, the super stickers and chats, the questions, and we'll do it again. Thanks a lot.